Design standards.
Yeah, see.
Okay, good evening. We'll have order here. Bill, when you're ready.
Yep.
Okay, it is 5:30 at the least, on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, and this regular meeting of the Sandpoint Planning and Zoning Commission is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Commission Chair Mose Dunkel presiding. Also present are Commissioners Wayne Benner, Reed Weber, Ivan Reimar, Grant Simmons, William Mitchell, and Scott Torpy. If everyone will please stand, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do commission members have any announcements or reports? Hearing none, moving on to the consent calendar, we will now, I would now at this time entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes and the consent calendar is approved. Next, we'll proceed with matters from the public. If you would like to speak on a topic pertinent to city business that is not on the agenda, now is your opportunity to do so. If you wish to speak and haven't yet completed a sign-up form, please do so and hand it to staff. The forms are located on the table by the doors. If you're attending remotely and wish to speak on a matter that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand on Zoom at this time. I would like to make everyone aware that the city does have a policy on public meeting decorum. The rules are posted on the wall just outside of the chamber entrance doors. In summary, I would ask that everyone please be pleasant and respectful. Do not make derogatory statements about others, including city staff. Not be disorderly or disruptive. No calling out, clapping, or holding up signs, etc. Please note that the commission cannot take testimony on any specific planning or land use related matter or application outside of an official public hearing. This time is for general comments on topics not included on the agenda and for comments only, no questions or debate. You may contact the mayor or staff during regular business hours if you have any questions or concerns. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and whether you reside in the city limits of Sandpoint. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to speak?
No, not currently.
All right. I just like going through all that. And nobody on Zoom either? Okay.
That's that question.
Kind of sets the tone.
Yeah, we could probably play through that.
Okay, we have no public hearing this evening, so we'll move right into the old business, which is a discussion on the draft commercial zoning and new historic preservation code. I will yield the floor to Deputy Director of Community Planning and Development, Bill Dean. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you. Just as a reminder, it's not a public hearing tonight. And basically what we want to do tonight is pick up kind of where we left off. We have this very large assignment that we've been handed to take a look at our commercial zoning, look at in the context of downtown revitalization, historic preservation. So this is a continued conversation along those lines. And I very much appreciate your participation and efforts to take it seriously and review the ordinance draft that we've published and been working on together. We've had, again, this is not a meeting where we're going to make decisions tonight in terms of a formal recommendation to council. And you're also getting to know me. I'm not a huge fan of using PowerPoints all the time, but for the purposes of just kind of reminding ourselves where we were, For the viewing public who may be watching remotely or want to watch this later or the video, I do have 7 or 8 slides we're going to pull up right now just to kind of as a warm up. And then what I want to do is jump right back to the ordinance and share with you a few changes that we're introducing from our conversations that we had last time, as well as just some evolved thinking on some of the land use restrictions we're talking about in downtown. Again, the hands on the chess piece. We've got this until the end of a public hearing that's going to happen down the road. So this is very much the time to kick around ideas, be deliberative in our discussion and whatnot. So that's what we're doing tonight. Discussion of commercial zoning, historic preservation. Jason, you want to give us the next slide? Couldn't do this without Jason. He's the one that jazzes up the slides for me and everything. This is great. Thank you, Jason. This looks great. This is a reminder. Really to accelerate downtown as an activity center, a unique destination. I've used the term periodically as the city's living room. We want to increase its emphasis and be top of mind for where we can drive investment. And that's going to be through the collection of the walk, shop, eat atmosphere. Let's go to the next slide. We talked a little bit about in terms of our rethinking of downtown. Where is it? The area it's largely the main contributing area to support it. Where is that located? Right now, we've got several hundred acres. We talked about, why is the zoning, for example, at 5th and Larch the same as this for First and Cedar? Maybe it stands to reason we kind of hone in on some geographies, and that's what we've been doing by identifying what's called the downtown core and an outer core. So really, the whole point is to refine the collection of regulations that better fit what we think of as downtown. That's really what this effort is shaping up to be. So let's go to the next slide. To do that, we'll talk a little bit about what happens on the ground floor in areas. The big distinguishing piece here is, what do we allow on the ground floor? We're trying to loosen some rules around the downtown so that you can have, at least we're talking about loosening some rules, around the downtown so you can have residential uses on the ground floor. Right now, we've got 200 plus acres, more if you include all the commercial zoning. That requires basically ground floor non-residential uses, and it can be a real inhibitor. So instead of requiring that, we would allow it, but you're not going to require it to be there. You could also allow residential use to be ground floor in the outer core. Really, that's what we're talking about. And just thinking and trying to visualize the downtown as that primary activity generating walk, shop, eat, entertain, linger type of environment that we're trying to create for the main living room, the main core of the downtown. Let's go to the next slide. So we have rules that are going to be dealing with land use, obviously, but also building form in mass. One thing we spent quite a bit of time on, over an hour last time, in great discussion, were building heights. Threw out some ideas that were shaped in large part from what we currently had on the rules as it relates to building heights, and there's some step back requirements and things like this. We evaluated different ideas and looking at and thinking about that. But we weren't very comfortable as a commission. I think there was a growing awareness of there's some tools out there that we can use, but not any real sense of agreement that there was we had really stuck the landing. So when I find myself in situations like that where we're trying to hone in on an issue, I think sometimes you need to understand what principle is sort of driving that conversation, what the purpose might be behind a rule. So I thought it'd be helpful for us to put down in the building height section a purpose statement. Why would we regulate? Because each city is going to approach this differently. What is the purpose that we would put behind limiting heights? So I generated one based on the conversations that I have gleaned from you, from council, from community members, through osmosis, just being here, that I thought would be a good place for us to take a look at. Not too dissimilar from that good discussion we had when we were doing the residential zones, and we looked at the purpose statement behind lot coverage. Open space, light air open space, bulk, mass, it's really the same thing. One way to look at it, this is kind of our lighthouse. If we all agree on this purpose statement, well, then any rule we debate, any number we put in there for building heights, for example, that's going to help us align. If it's not, then maybe the purpose statement is off. It needs to be tweaked. So I'm trying to come at this from a different angle that may be a little bit more comfortable, and then we can add whatever fancy rule we want. I took a much more simplistic approach this time. I'm gonna walk you through that here in just a minute. And also, like I mentioned last time, we haven't gotten into it, but we have the frontage types and building materials throughout the downtown core and the outer core that are intended to allow for some individual expression, but also be something that's recognizable as a downtown. Let's go to the next slide. So for two different meetings, we were looking at the downtown core and outer core on the left. As a result of the meeting we had last time, there's a suggestion to good discussion, I should say, to kind of rethink the boundaries of the downtown core and outer core a little bit. In that discussion, however, you did ask us, consider bringing the downtown core all the way down Superior out there toward the stoplight there on Superior. We could do that. Jason and I have had a lot of conversations together, looking in context of the streetscape project that's going right now, that's being led at City Council's behest and led by our engineering team. We have produced this draft for discussion purposes now to sort of revisit that geography to see if we really want to eliminate the ability to have ground floor residential on that entryway into the city. Again, the idea is that your downtown is supposed to be this narrow space, this small space that's intended to be your living room. And I just think it warrants some additional discussion. So these are the two geographies. As you can see, we're honing into the downtown core, and I'm pleased that it's moving in this direction, frankly. If everything is special, nothing is special, and that's the problem we have with the commercial A today. It's several hundred acres. It's purple. The existing zoning map, all of this is purple, like you see the boundaries, right? It's all the same color. It's all the same thing. Go to the next slide. So here we are, highlighted in blue there. This is kind of where we are. And this is just a little bit of a look ahead. I thought I'd give you a snapshot. Here's a little bit of my thinking just on a rough schedule. Again, we're trying to be deliberate here and take our time with this, but also, we do want to get it to City Council in a reasonable time frame. They're anxious to see this thing move forward. At the same time that you're reviewing these things, I'm going to be working with the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission, likely do a walkthrough of a hypothetical permit with them or permit examples if you had a business within the downtown core, rather the historic preservation overlay area. What does it mean? Okay, here we are. Let's have a fake permit come in. What does it mean? What exactly are we looking at here? So I think I'm going to have to set up a special session with them to do that. I have printed here in April that we would be looking at the code. I thought maybe what we would do is do a page turn on the code the first meeting, and then the second meeting, maybe we do the same exercise, walk a hypothetical permit through, basically kind of try to target April as the month we'd be focusing on the historic preservation piece of this. And then I think picking up on what Commission Member Mitchell was saying at the last meeting about, there's implications here, obviously, about thinking about some of the remaining commercial properties. That's always been top of mind. I think what we would do is there are a few ideas that Jason and I have as it relates to things like setbacks and other development standards that we want to introduce potentially some changes. Since we have this open now, let's look at the standards that would remain for commercial A, B, and C and see if some of those things need to be tweaked. For example, there's some interesting setback regulations that we might want to consider. Nothing major. I think at the end of this, I would also like to talk at some point about the potential for looking at the appropriateness of some of the zoning districts we have, the commercial zoning districts, and maybe there are areas that are ripe to be rethought of in terms of maybe rezonings to something else like residential land uses. At the end of this exercise, if we arrive at that, we wouldn't be necessarily undertaking those rezonings now, but rather we might be able to get to the point where your recommendation could be to council, hey, as the next step, let's look at something like that. Because that would be its own discrete effort. This is kind of where my mind is in terms of the schedule. I think this is our last slide. And what I'd like to do, is this sounding about right to you? Is it kind of a warm up to the exercise and the schedule looks about right to you? Or
yeah, ultimately though, what you mentioned sort of expands beyond downtown.
Yeah.
right? I mean, we talk about sort of
Yep.
true sort of land use stuff.
Yep.
I think if I'm understanding though, the mission is let's get downtown right first.
That's exactly right. Let's get downtown right. That's why we haven't introduced into these drafts any of the changes to commercial A, B, and C, other than creating a core and an outer core. But there are a couple standards within A, B, and C, if this were to move forward, that we would want to introduce now since we have this thing open. But they're not, it's not a wholesale rewrite. It's a couple little things that I think are mainly on setback regulations. That I think it might be a little, the handcuffs might be a little tight. So we'll get to that though. We may not arrive there, but that's kind of where my mind is right now. Let's see where we get. And again, the commission, you could add 12 months to this if you wanted to, if you want to really spend more time with it. But I mean, I want to emphasize that we're not in a hurry. We want to get this right. And if that means we need a little more time, great. Yeah. All right. With that, Jason, can you please pull up the draft? I think at this point, I'm kind of PowerPointed out myself. I just want to pull up the draft and share with you right off the bat the changes that we made since our last conversation. Number one, again, we're talking about the commercial A, B, and C zones. We're adding a downtown core and a downtown outer core. You see those added in red on the right. The new language is in red. The strike through is what we're proposing to remove. Most of what you see in this table is not creating new limitations and restrictions to A, B, and C, commercial A, B, and C. It's just sort of reformatting the table to be sort of consistent across. Yet, let's scroll down a little bit here so we can see that. There we go. On the manufacturing, we have a lot of real estate dedicated to this, and in the city right now. And I just thinking through this, not sure if a manufacturing use is really going to be consistent, with what we're trying to pull off in the downtown outer core. We have a lot of land in A, B, and C, plus the industrial areas for this. Again, trying to hone in. So that's one change from last time is in the outer core, removing the ability to do that. I think what happens when you look at it at a manufacturing ancillary use to a storefront retail, sales and services outlet, let your mind wander a little bit. That could be, arguably, that could be something along the lines of maybe a local plumber wanted to have a roll-up door in the back where they're making some kind of a specialty product, or a welder making a specialty product, but they have a little bit of a storefront. Not sure if that's the kind of downtown or outer core thing we're looking at. Maybe that might be better suited, just given the building types and things that are needed for that kind of thing, to be a little farther out from downtown. Something to think about. If we scroll down the table, there's, I think, one or two other changes.
Yeah, could I have so like what constitutes
Yeah, what constitutes
manufacturing?
manufacturing?
Because our next door neighbor downtown retail store, Campfire Couture, in the back, she produces purses, leather goods,
Right.
that they sell here and in Coeur d'Alene.
Right. So that's exactly why I want to talk about this. That's exactly why I want to have this conversation is, maybe we might have to add in an additional layer of refinement, but that definition, manufacturing to a storefront retail, came at us from another project just this past week, where their interpretation of that was basically tilt-up industrial space with a little office in front for contract plumbers and metal fabrication, things like that. And that
I mean, she's
was
90% storefront. I mean,
that was concerning to me. So we could look and see what a reasonable percentage was. Right now, I think this says 4,000 square feet in the rules down below in 9219. I think it's like 4,000 square feet of space is, that's a pretty big space. So in a downtown setting, that might make sense if it's more limited, but having a new use on a vacant lot that's for your manufacturing might not be consistent with what what we're trying to pull off. That was the concern. A small scale, something like you're talking about, absolutely makes sense. I think there's Another example of it could be like a woodworker that might have a just small shop in back that does, arts and craft type thing with a storefront up front. That type of thing might be okay. It's the larger scale stuff. The, so maybe we put a limit to that to, 1,000 square feet or something might be a way to approach that. That was a bit of a concern. Let's scroll down and look at the other one.
Just-
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, that does not include then like assembly or repair. And I'm thinking of our bike shops, our ski shops and things like that that are repairing skis and.
Yeah, that's a, no, assembly and repair, I mean, there's benefits and burdens to any way you organize land uses in a table. Like we've talked about, you can get really specific and list every land use in the world, and there's 200 or 300 land uses that are listed. And the next thing you know, as soon as somebody comes to the front counter, it's not listed, and then you're in trouble. Or you have, one category, urban. Well, that's not going to work either. That's sort of the antithesis of zoning's about anyway. So this, over the years, this has been generated to have this type of an approach, which is sort of a mix of these broad categories. I don't see anything, I've not experienced anything being in downtown that is that I would consider falling outside of what I see here. One example, for example, is like, even though it's not in the downtown geography, is the chocolate factory, for example, right? Okay, then you're making chocolates. At some point, a little counter with a operation in the back is fine, but at some point that becomes a giant factory, right? So is there a square footage limitation that makes sense in a downtown context? Knowing, of course, this is allowable in a lot of other places in the city. So that's a good question for the commission to get their heads around. Having an assembly part of bike repair in the middle of your shop is not inconsistent with the things that are on this list. We can't really see the whole table, so let's scroll down and see the other parts. The larger, more controversial issue that, sort of ignited a lot of discussion, which I'm very grateful for, because that's the whole point, is to get people thinking about what we want. Again, zoning is aspirational. What is it that we're aspiring to become? For your downtown, we had placed limitations in the discussion draft last two times, of in the downtown core, not allowing office uses to be on the ground floor. This mainly stemmed from the concern generated initially, like I mentioned, around so many real estate offices there, which are really, there's a lot could be said about that. So we were concerned that just being so specific to real estate agencies was not the right way to go. So we broadened it to just no offices. I don't think any one of these land uses is going to be make or break your downtown. Downtown, there's a whole collection of things that are going on. You've got a partially SURA funded effort to deal with the downtown revitalization of the streetscape. That's a huge part of it. Part of it is just the business associations themselves and the Chamber of Commerce and their efforts, and what the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission is doing. A lot of things conspire. Just the sheer grit of the merchants and retailers and restaurateurs themselves are making downtown what it is. I don't think any one land use is going to make or break your downtown. It is a concern because a lot of offices can be absolutely dead spaces, right? That's a concern. But there's also in the downtown itself right now 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 land uses within that 8 or 10 acres. That would be non-conforming. Again, they can continue on forever if we did have a limitation. So just trying to work on downtown, we have to remember that, this is a point, this is a continuum, right? This is never going to be, you're never done working on your downtown. You're never done doing city planning. You're never done getting together as a community, trying to figure out how you want to improve in the future. And so this might be something that could be for a future code change. It might be something what we want to include now. I think it's generated a lot of good discussion. I've had property owners in residences and people tell me this is great, that they want to limit the offices. Other people say the exact opposite. I had one person in my office absolutely coming unglued in my office. And I asked them, well, have you looked at the maps? Well, no, I haven't looked at the maps. Have you looked at the ordinance? Well, no, I haven't read anything of the ordinance. Well, what do you know about this? I don't know, but I don't like it. And I thought, wow, okay. So there's an emotional response that can happen when somebody says you're tinkering with anything. Most people, when they look at a land use table like this, we're in the middle of a change, they wake up to the fact that there's restrictions on the books today, and they don't like them. So that's in my experience. Now we're shining the light on some areas that we need to shine a light on and have a conversation as a community and make these decisions. But it is illuminating the fact that some people are waking up for the first time that there's limitations on the property they've enjoyed for a long time. Not everybody realizes they can't do a gas station on their property in downtown today. They can't. They don't like that. So that's just the nature of how this works. They're busy being successful business people. They don't necessarily pay attention to this every day. They don't. That's understandable. I get it. But this is a significant change. I think this is the one land use category that's been driving a lot of discussion.
Where did we land on this? I think I was one of the naysayers, and just in my own part, I think I've come around to, again, thinking that the restriction of office space in the downtown core is a good idea
Mm-hmm.
on the first floor.
Yeah, I think this is something that I want you to discuss. I think in the end, you're going to hear testimony when we have a hearing, but we're not there yet. So again, the hand is on your chest piece. As a commission, you should be talking amongst yourselves. I think you've heard quite a bit from me. We did meet with the property owners groups where we presented a limitation. And it was a good meeting. I thought it was. In fact, we had one. Commissioner Weber was there to participate. We had a council member there. It was a good discussion. I'm really pleased that so many property owners come out and take seriously the effort that we've been assigned to collectively work on. And there wasn't any one voice that overrode the meeting. It was more like, okay, let's all participate here. And I think generally speaking, if I had to characterize this effort, basically, it's a reduction in land use regulations for a good portion of the commercialized zoning. It's a relaxation of zoning. It's a liberalization of zoning standards. And then for the downtown core, this one additional limitation. So it's both, but mostly it's take a step away and remove some of the rules so that the market can perform. The market is the market in the end is going to be of paramount importance to understand. And you're going to need to hear from property owners and business owners as we go through this. But I'd be curious to hear what, because you've had a month or a month and a half to think about this a little bit, talk with people, hear from people. I'm curious if there's anything on this particular line item, because again, no one line item here is going to make or break it downtown, to be clear. The sky's not falling one way or the other, but it is something that's, we can't be afraid to talk about.
Commissioners, if you have something to say, please make sure your mic is close to your mouth and let's not have a question and answer so much. Let's just have a statement and then we can move through this a little bit quicker. If you have something to say that's the same thing that maybe I said, then maybe just hold it. or just say ditto,
Can I
Commissioner?
do, sorry for a question, but do you know what percentage of the downtown would so is now offices permitted on the ground floor with the blue, or is it not permitted?
Yeah, to read this table right now, the first three columns are A, B, and C, and offices are permitted everywhere.
And I'm talking about in the two right-hand columns.
Yeah, right. Nothing has been established. So the original draft I proposed, you can see the N. They had an N and a 9, and
Right, that's a second floor.
correct. And that it was permitted in the outer core. It just wasn't allowed in the downtown core. Again, that's 8 to 10% of your total commercial zoning in the city, right?
Yeah.
So you're not saying you can't do offices in Sandpoint. It's just like, what we were saying is there's a piece here that we might not want to have those. Again, I counted, I think, 7 or 8 real estate agencies. I'm like, okay. And that's the concern that was shared with me that got me thinking about this to begin with.
I did my real question is, I was wondering about the blue marks, but my real question is, like, if you looked at the downtown core, what percentage of the door fronts are currently
that land use.
Yeah, would
Right.
currently be non-conforming.
That's right. So I don't have a percentage for you. Again, I think it's got to be over a dozen businesses. If I had to guess, it may be, I'm going to go count, but between now and the next meeting, I'm just going to count them.
Okay.
But it's something along that, it's in that neighborhood. You got title companies, you got real estate offices, you got, attorneys' offices, things like that. So there's a number. There's a number there.
But what I'm wondering is like, what would happen? Like
Mhm.
if all non-conforming businesses left down in the downtown core,
Right.
but would you get people moving in that are gonna provide dining, whatever,
Right.
the lingering, or would you get a ghost town?
So first of all, it's would we get, not me, but would the city get?
Would one
Right.
get, sorry.
Would one get? So that's absolutely, that's why I said this is an evolution. We're on a continuum. We're trying to move in the direction of some land use regulations that begin to help us understand and treat our downtown as something a little bit different. And you can't look at it alone. You have to look and see what else is going on in your city. We just liberalized, together with the commission's help, half of our residential zoning, or all of it's been liberalized to a certain extent, but half of its, density is allowed to increase significantly. Adding density to the outer core by virtue of ground floor residential, serious incentive right there, because you're not having to have lost leader space, for example, on, because you're required to do ground floor retail. So over time, does that conspire to put pressure on where you're going to locate these things? And then again, if you couple that with possibly some changes to commercial A, B, and C outside, possibly rezoning some of those sites to allow residential where today it's required to be something, commercial, you begin to, allow the market to better perform in a downtown core. Are we going to see that, overnight? Absolutely not. Again, it's a supply issue, right? If you constrain the supply of the space, stands to reason there's going to be additional pressure, elsewhere. Jason?
Just some numbers come to mind. Our 2020 population standpoint was around 6,000. We grew 60% between 2020 and 2022 when we reached almost 20,000. And the forecast is to grow to 16,000, another 60% between now and 2024. So if we think about what are the challenges faced by retail business, 2040, sorry.
2040. Yeah.
Got it. Think about what are the challenges that retail businesses face in Sandpoint. Seasonal demand surges, of course. The shoulder seasons are brutal here. When you have a bad snow year, they struggle. We've been hearing about it. It's in the paper. The Creme 2 News did a story on it a couple weeks ago. Well, one remedy for that is provide more demand from your local consumer. Okay, the residential zoning amendments that you approved, the council approved just a month ago, are to allow us to accommodate the population that wants to be here without displacing the population that's here today. That was the huge success that you guys delivered to the city council just a month ago, to allow for the missing housing that we wouldn't see if we hadn't allowed for smaller lot sizes and relaxed building footprint standards. So if we imagine, okay, we think, oh, businesses, we've all gone through the Great Recession. We've all seen what happened in 2008 to 2014 when downtown businesses were boarded up. And it's hard for us to imagine a future where we have a thriving downtown. But what filled those vacant spaces over the decade after the Great Recession? 12 to 20 real estate offices took a lot of that space up. So the principle here is relax regulations across 300 acres of our commercial zones to accommodate what? More residential, because we know the population is coming, we know the demand is going to increasingly shift towards demand for living space for people. But now we need to accommodate the businesses who over time might be displaced in the rest of our commercial zone. So the hope here is that over, a generation or two, so that my daughter in 20 years when she buys her first house in Sandpoint, or my grandkids in 40 years, 50, 60, I don't know, whatever they are living here, we'll have a downtown that represents something very special, something that we hear all the time from the Ellies of this community who remembers coming into town to go to the pharmacy, to the drugstore, to do things in downtown Sandpoint that we do not have anymore because some large percentage of our commercial space downtown is occupied by offices, not a bad thing. But the question is, what does the future look like for downtown Sandpoint? If we are in 15 years from now, in a population of 16,000 in this community, there's going to be more demand for commercial retail space. But over time, some of that 16,000 population might be living in what's currently zoned our commercial areas, because we just adopted, or we're talking about adopting regulations to allow residential in those commercial areas. And that's all intentional. The purpose of this is to squeeze demand for commercial space into our downtown core so that we have a thriving, rich, vibrant downtown core.
I mean, I guess like, I'm sorry.
No.
I guess one of my concerns is
Well,
I'm thinking about.
Please speak into the mic.
I'm
Here's why. Because when
With
the
the transcript. Yeah.
city council will come back and they'll look at this and they'll use this as their, we're trying to sway their opinion. So with our testimony, so we need that to be picked up. That's
And I guess my concern is the order of operation. Like, do you address the downtown first and then be like, hey, let's go out to these 200 acres and then try to, or do you say, let's squeeze the 200 acres on the outside into the core and then change the kind of, the rules that we have in this green zone? Because if there's no one being driven now from all of the purple, it's 200 acres outside or 300 acres outside of the downtown core, what's the incentive for anybody to move down there?
Right. Good question. So again, Sandpoint is unique. This is a unique problem, and this is a unique opportunity, a unique situation entirely. This is going to be a long way around the barn to get into to answer your question. You have an urban fabric that already is primed to allow people easy access to your downtown, whether you're a visitor or whether you live here. It's fantastic. This grid pattern and the easy way to connect, the investment in bike infrastructure, the continued focus on bike ped, and just the way to get to downtown is easy, right? It's not difficult to do at all. You can find your way there easily, and it's only going to get better over time. Visualize that outer core area is residential land uses predominantly. By allowing this ground floor residential, you're going to see that is going to be the more consistent demand over time, right? That's what you can. That's what we're opening up here, but we're doing it in a fashion that allows allows offices, allows retail, allows restaurants, if that's what that property owner in the market is telling us. But we're allowing residential uses come in. I think you're going to see more residential land uses populate that area than you are additional restaurants and things. If I had to guess, I think there's really very little demand for office space right now. We all know that, right? You probably know that better than most. So what are you going to see there? I don't think you're going to see new bricks and mortar. I haven't seen evidence that there's a huge demand for additional new bricks and mortar retail space. So allowing this to fill in residential land uses is going to, like Jason said, provide some additional pressure by constraining that supply to go here. What we're proposing for downtown and what this effort is about has to be taken in pieces. I can't reopen the comp plan that you just adopted and say, let's re-envision everything. This is tried and true principles of city planning and downtown planning specifically that makes sense. Again, like I've said, visualize the donut. You've got a donut hole and you've got the donut around it. What's our problem? It's not the donut hole, it's the donut around it, right? We need to do something about that donut. We've spread everything out so far. Let's tighten it up. There's going to be plenty of discussion over time about what might make sense along the Highway 2 corridor. That's the remaining commercial space you have. What does that corridor look like from over there at the county building all the way up to the gas station over by Larch? We're going to have that conversation. And I don't think that whatever squeeze or change or amplification or liberalization of zoning in that corridor would change my thinking at all here, because what I've been saying over and over again, if anything, we're going to be trying to add residential land uses as allowable land use there, and loosen restrictions so that development is a little easier to achieve everywhere. Notwithstanding the conversation we're about ready to have on building heights, which I'm sure is going to get really fun. But I just, it's not a perfect equation, right? It's not an equation. The market's going to change. What we're trying to do is create the living room. And again, I'll say it again, I don't think that any one land use is, residential is the most important to me in this case. Because I really think that having the disposable income proximate to your downtown is going to be your number one recipe. Since you already have the bones, you already have the mechanism to get to downtown. That's there. You already have the investment that you've made in the phase one revitalization, phase two revitalization. We're moving in a great direction. The residential land use is going to be absolutely paramount. And then, over time, you're going to be selective with the rest of it. I don't think we need to start on the outside and come in. I think the assignment is take a look at downtown. And for me, it was easy to arrive at this. If I told you I thought we needed to start with the corridor, I would. I'm forecasting for you that what I think we need to do with the corridor is possibly some rezonings and allowing some additional residential uses. That's what I think is going to be where the conversation for me, from my office, leads in terms of a discussion draft when we get there.
Commissioner Torby.
I thinking back a few minutes, and you had requested we just sort of say what we think, right? Forget the question, just say what we think. So what I think is that it is sound and consistent, it's sound policy and consistent with the objectives of the downtown core principles and purpose that we don't allow offices on the ground floor, that we allow them above that, which that footnote would do. And in terms of people's access to offices, whether they're one type or another, if you just take sort of Cedar Street as, what might be considered sort of the farthest point, and how far would someone have to walk to get to the downtown outer core, which would allow an office space on the ground floor, correct?
Yeah, you have to walk a block.
Yeah, not very far. And I don't think people are even going to notice that. They're not going to think they just went from East Berlin to West Berlin and there's a whole different, sort of structure of government or anything. They're just going to think, well, okay, that's where some of these other things are. And it won't. So I don't think it's going to affect people who want those services. They're going to be able to get them. And it is, again, consistent with what it is we are trying to achieve with our downtown core.
I mean, I would just say it's the people who want to provide those services that makes a difference. And it's also like, what difference does it make if I walk to Fourth to go to a restaurant versus First? I mean, that would be the counter argument, right? Like, it's not East Berlin to West Berlin to go to Third and, anyway, I'm self-interested in this, so maybe doesn't matter.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Mr. Benner.
Well, in my opinion, I think, first of all, our downtown core is way too big. It shouldn't be more than a small mall. And I think by stretching it out, just opens the door for more offices, more of those kind of uses that we're trying to put into the outer core. So that's just, I think we need to look at that too, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair, one comment in response to that. The discussion about the southern terminus of the downtown core was had in the last couple of weeks. And where the green now ends on the map on the right matches where we are extending downtown revitalization phase 3 to this year, which is Lake Street. So that was a little bit intentional as well. We don't likely have funding in the near horizon to do another phase of revitalization down to Superior, at least not through urban renewal. So if we're about to spend millions of dollars to redesign the public realm along that stretch of First Avenue, it's intentionally being designed right now to foster that downtown feel. Beyond that, you kind of get into a different corridor. In fact, the vehicle lanes will be situated differently south of there. You've got some existing land uses like the courthouse and the prosecutor's office and things like that that are non-conforming, so to speak. So there was an intentionality to the southern boundary of the current draft of the downtown core. That's where we are building downtown to this year and next year.
I don't, I just, after having looked at a lot of different places around, I think that they're a block, maybe 2 blocks long, maybe a block, 2 blocks wide, and that's about it for a real core. And then you get into kind
May I
of,
ask, do you not believe it's feasible for the city of Sandpoint to support a downtown core of more than 2 blocks?
at this stage, I do.
For a city of, let's assume we're going to be a city of 16,000 by 2040. Can 16,000 not support a downtown core larger than 2 or 3 blocks?
At this stage, I don't think they can. That's just my personal opinion, but I just don't think they can. And who's to say at that stage, it expands? You can always expand it. And so, and that's,
Just one more comment. Between now and 2040, the land uses that we see implemented in this core will extend for the 75 years beyond there. You got to assume everything that gets built is going to be in that form for 50 to 75 years. So we're planning now for the end of the 21st century. That's kind of what we're thinking on that generational time frame here. If we decide by 2040 that we want a larger downtown core, we're now planning for the next century.
yeah. And I just look at the land uses that 20 years ago aren't downtown anymore too. You know, they've changed. I mean, a lot of our land uses. So
And you can go back further and we have properties downtown that literally were gas stations that are now beloved local businesses.
Right.
Where we don't allow gas stations anymore.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Reimar.
I could do this right. So we, last week, had spoken about the issue over, and I can understand some of the concern from various members on the board of looking to remove the ground floor offices on the downtown serious core of the downtown. But at the same time, we said that any existing use remained existing
Correct.
until such time the building is vacant.
This is time as that business owner, property owner decides to vacate that land use. And only then, after 6 months of it being dark, do you lose that non-conforming provision. It's a very generous provision. The idea that there's lights out on offices downtown because you have a table that says you can't do them is not the case. The way the non-conforming provisions of our code in Title 9.7 work, and the ones that I'm revising are going to be even clearer, is that, you know, if this ordinance were to pass where offices are no longer, new offices are no longer to be on the ground floor, they can only be on the second floor, all the ones that are on the existing floor would be able to remain until such time as that property owner decides that they don't want to have that. And only after 6 months after that, when they go dark, would the new rules kick in.
Yeah, but I can understand, and especially in the real estate market, you know, because essentially they're using their front windows as placards, billboards. You walk by, okay, a house for 325,000 or house, blah, 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 blah. But I can also see the issue of it is that at night, when you're leaving, let's say the 219 is buzzing, across the street is buzzing, but you go up a bit and all of a sudden it's just dark storefronts or barely lit storefronts that are offices and aren't really creating that you're trying to create this.
That we're trying to create.
We're
No, that's very important that we speak in the right terms. I'm going to be adamant about
working on
that.
it.
Yeah, I know.
We'll continue to respond to your wishes. This is not us bringing our wishes to you.
This is a community issue, and we are going to build a rock solid record on we.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with everything. I was just
Yeah.
bringing up his point. I
Yep.
can see his point.
Yeah.
That it's a great advertisement vehicle being there, but simultaneously, if we have this process that is going to be over a period of time, I mean, probably 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years for
Right.
people to sit there and say, okay, you know, we feel that if we move the building somewhere else, we'll get better sales, or the owner decides to change the building. So it's not going to happen overnight.
That's right. That's right. And this is exactly the type of conversation that I was hoping we would be engaging in. It's getting us all thinking. It's getting us, you know, critically reviewing, contemplating the stuff. Look, I mean, I have to say I agree with everything that's been said so far. I mean, everything that's been said so far. There's lots of different perspectives on this. I'll reiterate, I don't think there's any one thing that's going to make, we all know there's not one thing that's going to make or break it downtown. It's a collection of things over time. So whatever we decide on this, you know, continue to bring these ideas. I mean, in the end, you'll get the right answer because you will have thought through it.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Weber.
The comment on that kind of public fronting use, and I think there could potentially be both in this case again, where you do have that public facing street frontage that is a retail component for, the first half of a structure, but the last half in the footprint could potentially be the office space or support space. And so I don't know how the code gets written for this exactly, and if but potentially you might see more like realtors or other office type spaces teaming up with little coffee shop areas. So like they take the lobby, they have a portion of the lobby and the offices are in the back. So that might be something to consider.
Yeah,
The kind of
Great idea.
great idea.
both and.
We could absolutely craft language that talks about having a requirement for storefront. Ironically, the code currently has that, but it's everywhere across everything, which is causing problems elsewhere, like the Tribute project, for example, that was approved at this tokenistic, hallway that was 5 feet deep that was called retail, but it was tokenistic. It just had windows, and it was just wasted space.
Yeah, so like without like watering down like what storefront means, I think it has been watered down a little bit. It's like, oh, just a wall of glass, but it's like, no, it really means like an engaging pedestrian frontage.
Yeah,
for the
it'd
building.
be tough to, wouldn't be impossible to write something like that, but I can certainly kick around some ideas on how that might happen. It's just, you get into this odd square footage game and it just gets a little bit weird. And then, mix of uses like that can be complicating for the business as well and the property owner. But I appreciate the thought. Have to think about that some more. About how to actually. We do have a whole nother section on. Well, is there any more discussion, Chair, on that item on that?
I just had a short amount to say. I just spent last week in downtown Boise. And I drove there, but I walked every day that I was there. And the downtown core is actually, like Commissioner Benner said, it's not really that big. It takes a minute to walk around there, but there's a lot of activity. And then I spent a little bit of time in the old part of Nampa, and it's pretty small. Maybe 3 blocks. I mean, it's pretty tight. And so at that point being brought up, I think, I don't know. Our core is definitely big enough, I think, that the inner core. As far as the office stuff, I've kind of went back and forth on this, but I definitely see the reasoning behind wanting it to be a more customer based, like more repetitive customers. And I mean, the thing that pops up is, restaurants and coffee shops and stuff like that. But I mean, if you have nothing but that, then it needs to be a pretty small core. I think having the ability to have offices on the second floor, or maybe in the as a portion of it, and not on maybe the storefront, maybe that is part of the solution. I kind of like that idea, like Commissioner Weber said.
I can certainly explore some of those ideas. I think I have a general idea. It's certainly not unanimous, but I'm thinking of getting a sense of, the commission still has some concerns about having offices on the ground floor. Let's dive into building heights. This one's gonna be fun. So I before we get to the table, I was hearing pieces of things from you, pieces of things from community members, property owners, business owners, city council. And I thought, well, is this really what the purpose of our building heights, is this what we're after? So I'd like to have you read this purpose statement and say, are we heading in the right direction here? Because that purpose statement could be worded the complete opposite.
It's almost like you can't have both,
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm reading is you're gonna have a downtown commercial zone, but you can't have buildings or tall buildings.
The limitation here on height is basically, right now you don't have anything that's very tall down there except for the Seasons, which is on the waterfront. And the zoning for 65 feet has been in place for over 20 years and no one's taken advantage of it for all kinds of reasons, right? So when I experience the downtown, what I've heard from others, it certainly is this perspective. Is this the perspective that needs to be in the code? And that's a question I think that'll come out of this exercise. But that informed the table, that purpose statement informed the table that I've produced for your consideration that talks about a 35-foot height limit in the downtown core and a 35-foot limit in the outer core with the ability to go to 45 feet with a CUP, provided someone comes before you, for example, and shows you imagery from adjacent rights of way and a mock-up of the buildings that relates to surrounding scenic resources, if that's what you're intending to protect. Looked at a lot of downtowns and mountain towns, and these numbers are consistent with a lot of downtown mountain towns. I don't know if that's right for us. And so 65 feet didn't yield anything. That certainly yielded one project, and that's it. Keeping in mind that the balance of commercial A isn't changing. It's in this table, it's shown at 65 feet. So it's not saying you can't do this in Sandpoint. It's just saying when you're experiencing downtown, as you're experiencing coming and going from this street to that street and walking around, are these views, important enough to place this land use limitation? And that's instead of getting at these fancy formulas for heights and angles and step backs, and which I think was getting a little formulaic and I think we were getting stuck in the weeds and we didn't really have a good grasp on the big picture. I thought I'd take a step back and say, okay, is this the big picture you're aiming for? And so I don't know. You guys are gonna have to tell me.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner
Go
Wetton
ahead, please,
first,
thanks.
or Commissioner Torby first, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. I got a couple of questions to begin helping me understand. Does changing it from 65 feet or 45 feet down to 35 feet, does that encourage or discourage redevelopment? That's the first question. And does 35 feet, does that in fact preserve scenic mountain views? I mean, does the reduction make a difference with regard to the purpose?
So one thing I'd like to do, I'm trying to organize an opportunity for the commission to actually go out on the street and have a fire truck raise a flag at 35 feet, for example, at certain locations, since we can all see what that looks like. 35 feet is going to afford a lot more views than 45, 55, or 65, just by virtue of the numbers. I have a decent enough understanding of how to look at a building and understand its height relative to things that are in its surroundings, just because I look at this stuff all day long. So I think, yeah, with 35 feet, you would be able to still enjoy some views of the surrounding area more so than you would if the buildings were taller. You will not be hiding views entirely at 35 feet. If you're standing at First and Bridge, for example, in a building that's 35 feet tall, goes up on Second, you'd still see Baldy. But if it were 65, you wouldn't, for example. So I've placed myself at multiple locations downtown thinking about this, going, oh, is this what you're after? Again, I'm a scribe here. I need to put some words down on the paper for us to respond to, try to arrive at it. As it relates to redevelopment, each property owner is going to have their own idea of what they want to do. And of course, the less regulations you have, the more allowance you have, that's just going to provide more opportunity for that property owner to chase any number of things. Is it going to inhibit development? I think the pro forma for any given project is so different from one property owner to the next that it's impossible to answer that question specifically. It's hard. I look and see what's been built in the last 50 years. What's been built in the last 75, let's go, what's been built in the last 100 years? You know, and how many buildings have been over 35 feet tall? You can count them up on one hand, I think. And most of that was done in the last, handful of years with the seasons, right? That's out there, at the lake.
And
So we're
I'd
not
bring it-
curtailing demand is, I think you're.
I don't see any evidence of that. I mean, we certainly haven't seen anything come across our desk, applications filed for buildings. No applications filed for buildings. The Farm and Flats building going up at 45 feet, they could have gone taller, but they didn't. They kept it at 45 feet.
I would also encourage us to look at the purpose statement. And
Yeah.
if the commission believes that the purpose of our building heights limitations should be to either encourage or discourage reinvestment downtown or redevelopment downtown, that should be articulated. If you want to establish, if you choose to establish building heights based on this, goal of encouraging redevelopment or incentivizing redevelopment,
Or maximum
make sure that's in your purpose statement.
Can I, Chair?
I think we have a couple other.
Oh, yeah, sorry, these guys first, yeah.
No, actually, my question was, thank you. My question was about the redevelopment, like the actuality of it. So, Commissioner Torpey already asked it.
Commissioner Mitchell?
So the 65 feet that's currently available now is with structured parking, right? I mean, so there's conditions on the 65 feet that would have limited somebody from building to that height already today. 35 feet's 2 stories, right? So that means we're going to be limiting downtown to 2 stories. I mean, you're an architect.
I mean, up to 3.
But if you're going to have commercial space on the first floor with a 15 or 16 foot, ceiling, that's going to be 2 stories.
Commissioner Mitchell, you want to read the code there that we have today. It's not, with structured parking is not required to go to 65 feet. Residential or structured parking.
Yeah, residential above, right? A certain percentage or whatever, right?
Correct.
Yeah, you're not required to do structured parking to enjoy 65 feet. You can have your building filled with residential uses and go to 65 feet.
It's an or, not an and.
Okay, sorry. excuse
Or,
me.
right.
But this is still a big restriction. I mean, this is a huge change.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that we're basically talking about 2-story buildings in the downtown core.
You're talking about 35 feet. I think stories is a misnomer. I think I was downtown and saw one building that had a 9-foot first story and one that had a 16-foot first story. So I think that's it really varies that much. I encourage you to go, well, you've been in all of them. So you see, that's why I try to avoid going to story, just go with feet. Because there's too much variation, especially with these collection of older buildings. But this is provocative, right? This is a purpose statement. Is this what you're after? I don't know until you tell me.
We moved the, sorry, I didn't ask for.
Grab that mic. Mike,
Could we move that down so we could see the statement again? It was highlighted in blue.
Move it up.
Oh, the purpose statement.
There you go.
2 pages.
Is there any way to make that smaller?
Yeah.
Yeah, reading through it, it makes sense. I understand that you're trying to keep view corridors, for lack of a better word. Other places I've lived have had view corridors, ordinances, things along those lines. So it kind of makes sense. I think you need to be a little careful of it, though, is that you probably want to tighten it up. Because if it's loose enough, it's gonna open itself up to a potential suit for determining what does it mean. See what I'm saying? You may want to tighten it up just a little bit.
You mean the purpose statement?
Yeah. It's a bit.
Purpose statement is intended to help us get out of the weeds when we're having difficulty interpreting a zoning standard. I would argue that the zoning standard itself is, let me rephrase this. At the end of this exercise, if the council is okay with the table, you might not even need the purpose statement. The purpose statement is helpful, especially when there's a little bit of gray area in a code. But I wanted to put it up here to help us with this conversation, number one. I do think it helps. Like this is a little loose. It's a purpose. It's not a regulation.
Okay.
It's intended to guide what follows, which is the actual regulation. So in the end-use zoning ordinance could have that removed. I think it's good for a lot of reasons, but it's not a regulation itself.
Kind of like comp plan.
Kind of like comp plan, helps you understand where it came from. A code user looking at that, what are they going to glean from this? Oh, wow, I've never been to Sandpoint. I'm thinking about investing. I have a bunch of cities on a spreadsheet. Oh boy, downtown. Wow, views. Oh, that's interesting. So, I've looked at lots of cities that have view corridors, view height limits, in most of the mountain towns that are trying to protect their surrounding scenic resources have limitations like this. This is not, we're not inventing anything here. It's just whether or not the balance of trying to make it, lessen the land use regulation such that investment, it just has fewer considerations versus the protecting of the resources over time. That's the pendulum we're on here. And again, what have we built in the last 75 years?
Yeah, it's something,
Commissioner Weber.
it's interesting just based on what has happened in the last few years. When you look at like the Burn Clow or the apartments on the other side of the road, they're all kind of maxing out around 45 feet. And it seems like 35, 45 number kind of fits the context of this area, just based on, and even just getting input from the community, and a lot of citizens in this area have really are kind of opposed to any change, of course, but they want to quote unquote keep things as they are. But I mean, right now we have building height limits that can go 3 times what's downtown right now. So what they are right now, could be quite a bit taller than what's in downtown Sandpoint. I guess all that to say is I think the current character that it's been for decades now, I think trying to align our codes with that makes sense versus going up to 65 feet in that downtown. And so I do think, 35, I think the goal of getting, 3 stories, whatever that really means internally to 35, if it's 35 feet or, slightly taller, there's probably some details in there, like what are the floor to floors? Well, how tall can the parapet be beyond that? I'd have to kind of, I think we, consider like what's the impact on the stories. But just from my perspective, 35 to 45 seems like a reasonable height.
And keep in mind, there's a lot of numbers between 35 and 65. There's no rule that says it has to be in increments of 10 or in increments of 5. You can go to 40.
Yeah,
Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, taking a look at the building that I saw downtown where the highest floor plate was, I think, 16 feet. I had the building official with me looking at some buildings. I think one was 16 feet, and you could, on top of that, two 9s, a 9 and a 10. So you're looking at 3 stories there for folks who think more clearly in terms of stories versus feet. Later in the code, we do clarify top of parapet, it's, when we say 35 feet, it's all in 35 feet. All of this is up to us to write.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this is not at all where I thought you were gonna go with how you were gonna handle this. It's actually pretty clever, I think. The one thing I would say is I think you can probably get rid of I think you could probably just say 45. The reason being, and it's sort of like the de facto reason is if you think about where this really affects, if you look at an actual map of, what's the reality of something being able to be built tall around Gunnings Alley? I mean, realistically, it's not. It probably won't in any foreseeable future, at least till the midterm, maybe 20 years or so. And so if we think about just across the street, though, let those buildings go up to 45. That's really what we're talking about. And then if you slide a block over with a shrunken downtown core, then you can also go up to 45. And I would argue it probably, I'm not sure what 35 is really doing from a sort of de facto standpoint.
Most of what you experience downtown is in the downtown core is not 35 feet.
Yeah.
It's not. Canada is not that tall from the sidewalk. might be.
Yeah,
Might be, might be
I'm a
just that.
bad judge of
Yeah.
like.
But most of that is not 35 feet
Gotcha,
tall, which you
gotcha.
experienced, on first. Most of it's not 35 feet tall. So this would be, taller than what most of the buildings are there.
Do you know how tall the Meadowbrook building is?
Not 35 feet from I believe that's one of the ones I measured with a laser pointer. I don't think I think it was shy of that by a number of feet. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Reimer.
So commercially, at least in my experience, a floor is 12 feet. Because it creates a space, real estate for mechanical and everything else. So maybe my thing is change it from 35 to 36.
Yeah, if there's a construction related reason or this commission, there are lots of reasons we could arrive at this thing. Generally speaking, talking in the realm of 35 to 45 is different than talking the realm of 65. So that we're really cooking with gas if we're arguing about 35 or 36.
Seems reasonable.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Benner.
I think in the core part of it, first of all, if you really look at, and all of a sudden you've got every single building 35 feet down First Avenue, it's going to be a wall to start with, because we're so used to looking at variations of heights down through that area there. But I think that 35 is staying more consistent with what we really have there today. And I think that's really what people have been talking about, of trying to keep the downtown core, and here again, that core area, more consistent with what it looks like today. And so I think that this is a good step in that direction, and whether it's 35 or 36 is.
What's the proposal for the outer core? I forget. Is it still
35 feet with planning commission allowance to go to 45 if it can be found that it's consistent with the purpose statement, which is basically to preserve surrounding scenic views of the landscape. So that would be, for example, to carry that forward, if an apartment complex came in and wanted to be 45 feet tall, planning commission would be looking at it to see how it fit in with the purpose of not trying to obscure views of Baldy, for example, or other views. Here's a view from First and Bridge. Right now, that building where Burwood is, that's probably about 16 feet.
The 35 feet would block that view.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Okay, yeah.
I mean, the same as 45.
I don't know if it's the same as 45, but now you're talking about how much of that building is actually goes up. I mean, this is precisely why I drafted this language, is for us to have this conversation. It's like, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to protect views? What are we doing?
How tall is that building? That ugly one. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it.
Sand Creek.
Sand Creek Plaza, that's
Sorry to the Sand Creek Plaza.
yeah, that's I can't recall the total height of that building, but it's
Pretty big.
It is 3 floors.
It's 3 full floors.
that's
forward
rough, that's in the neighborhood of 30 something feet.
Okay. Yeah, and it's got a basement too, right?
Mhm. But they're like,
One exercise would be just to imagine 35 feet, this roof line extending all the way down First Avenue.
Not on the east side anytime soon, though.
I'm
not sure material.
I don't see any applications flying in the office for that.
There's been a boutique hotel proposed at this corner, no application submitted, just a concept put on a website 6 years ago. No further progress.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Commissioner Benner.
On the historic area, is there a limitation to the height on that?
It's the same as the underlying zone, but what would happen in that case, any exterior modification would have to be brought before the ACHP for a permit as it relates to the materials and whatnot, but it follows the standards of the underlying zone. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Reimer.
I'm working on it, as we discuss these building heights, you were talking about residential development in the outer core or the edge of the inner core. So if you were to hold First Avenue or something like that down to the 35, 36 feet, something like that, understand as you went 1 or 2 blocks west, if somebody were to put up a building at 45 feet, then they'd get a pretty good view of the mountains and a view of the lake, which would make it.
Great point. Great point. That's a whole nother dynamic that I think you need to be thinking about when you're talking about building heights. So you right now, as you experience walking down the sidewalk, we all enjoy these views. When you start to populate the area with taller buildings, that no longer becomes a publicly enjoyed view. It's a privately enjoyed view by virtue of the fact that it's been taken away and now it's enjoyed by the person who lives in that apartment or whatever. So those are things to think about. You know, maybe 35 feet's too tall if the objective is to preserve the views. This is why I think we need to understand what it is our objectives are as it relates to how you experience downtown relative to these views. Maybe it's not important.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mitchell.
How much of this is views versus open space, like versus like a kind of tunnel effect? Because if you're standing on First Avenue, there's no views. I can go on top of the Bigelow building and I can barely see the lake at all.
Right.
I mean, like, so what are is it an open space or is it views?
That's what I'm asking you.
Okay.
There's not a lot of open space in downtown.
I mean, like the feeling of not being in a tunnel.
Yeah, so that's if that's a sentiment that you're interested in pursuing, then you would want to have lower building heights.
Yeah.
If that's a sentiment that's not bothersome to you, then you would say, no, I want to go in the other direction. Like standing here, if Jason stops wiggling the mouse for a second.
There certainly are views from First Avenue.
Yeah, there are views from First Avenue. Is that interesting for you to preserve?
Yeah, but right now I could build another 20 feet on both of these street corners and it would eliminate those views.
So the question is, do you want to impose regulations to preserve these views?
It's just that simple.
Yeah, that's what we're discussing.
That's what we're discussing. Is the commission interested in putting forward regulations that would preserve these views? If that's the answer, then we probably have to come down from 35 feet.
I mean, I don't think that's a good idea.
Commissioner Torpy.
Well, I think on that point, it would just seem to me that if you added even another story there, that this whole picture would be different. I mean, you would then limit it to,
Correct.
one-story buildings. And that goes back to I guess what I had asked earlier, the subject of encouraging or discouraging redevelopment. Do we want that line of one-story stores there for the next 100 years? Is that in the interest of the town, limiting it to that? Or, so I'm not for, building, creating a structure where people feel like, the world is, bearing down upon them and it's overwhelming just walking down the street. It's, not that. However, I'm looking for, and I have no way to discern it myself, but the idea that there is a balance between, the need, as you talk about, when the population is basically twice what it is now, and the attendant, needs of commercial and residential space in a downtown area in the future, and preserving what people are used to now, and preserving what little views there are as you walk down First Avenue anyway. I mean, whatever. So it seems like a 35-foot number is, for the downtown core, is what many people seem to accept, just without really maybe knowing its impact, but there seems to be a level of acceptance of that, and being repulsed by the idea it could be 65 feet. So there's a matter of scale. However, I want to, I guess, agree fully with Commissioner Reinhardt and say that, when you move over to the outer core, that you make greater allowances for building heights, and that if that encourages people to build where people are going to live, they are blocks away from all of this, living room life in the downtown core that we're trying to promote. And it would distinguish those two spaces. One would be bigger buildings than another. So I don't think they should be the same as a baseline standard of 35 feet with some allowance, that there should be a difference. And if 35 feet is, as much as people can bear, mentally, for the heights of buildings, such as the one we're looking at now, the 3-story building, then that would be my suggestion, stick with that.
So if I can understand you correctly, putting it in my own terms, there's a built environment character of Sandpoint that seems to be tolerating a 35 to 40-foot range buildings by virtue of what we see in surrounding neighborhoods, surrounding area, not necessarily preserving the views, but preserving the fact that it's consistent with the present built environment. That seems to be acceptable.
Yeah, I don't think.
So the purpose statement, in other words, would be perhaps less focused on preserving views, but rather consistency with the current built context.
Yes, because I don't think 35 feet is going to help preserve many views. So that's just my thought.
Okay.
But going to the adjacent land use that we're proposing, make that more attractive to build up and get greater density, and maybe the reduction, as we pointed out when we were doing our residential zoning, that you make greater use of land and therefore reduce the cost of each dwelling that you construct by allowing it to be higher. That seems to be sort of a formula. And I would encourage that by allowing taller buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Weber?
I just want to second the thoughts on the views being the focus of that mission statement. I don't know. I think when you align with streets and you have views down Church and Cedar and those east-west streets, you do get the views of the mountains, but I don't know if the height limit would really impact of the blocks and to the mountains beyond. So I don't know if that should be the focus as much as just, the context and scale of things. And related to that would be the kind of outer core requirement that you had there with the conditional use permit. I think we could just remove that and just allow 45 feet without an additional process, and just really okay, what do we want? This is where we want density.
So we're establishing that the context is establishing the height, and the context we understand and understand today is this 35 and 45. That's what we get.
Right. You
And just leave it at that.
You're a higher level in the outer core. You're stepping down towards the water. So those owners building
35 and 45 is easy. This is precisely why we generated this purpose statement, to see if it what would happen.
Commissioner Reimer?
Yes. So speaking on your same thing about the views, I mean, obviously Cedar Street, you come up to the intersection on Cedar and Fifth Avenue heading east, you've got a beautiful view. And that's because the Bridge Street project is on the old bridge, and it's not very high, and you get a really nice view. Now, that would be nice to keep that protected, because it is a good view. And then you said down Church, you can get a pretty good view because you're looking on the slot from the Canada Theater, which theoretically nobody's can build in front of it, so that leaves that open. But otherwise, coming up First Avenue, you can see Baldy looking a little bit to the west, but I don't know. So you really, point I'm trying to make is that when it comes down to view corridors, there's really only a couple in town. Now that wouldn't be interrupted, that you wouldn't want to be interrupted, because I think they add a certain a sense to the town. I know every time I come to the light and it's a nice day and the snow's on the mountains and the sun's shining, you're like, wow.
So just allow the streets to provide those, in those open spaces that we may have by virtue of a parking lot or a park, to provide those views, and rather let's get into the context of what we understand in 35 and 45. It sounds, hearing a lot of people, three of you say that and others shaking your heads, that's probably a better point of departure than protecting views of the mountains.
This was a view corridor that was identified in our downtown design report in 2023. And that report, I think we might have shown in a previous meeting, had some conceptual, box type renderings of what a 25-foot, 35-foot, up to 85-foot tall structure would look like in this location. And, clearly there's a view of the mountains. This is a view corridor that was identified as one worth considering the impact of different building heights on.
But that's a view corridor because the building burned down.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, but there was a 2-story building there, and if you get 3 blocks away, you can see above a 2-story building. If you're standing at the sidewalk, you can't see above a 1-story building. So there are view corridors. You got to think from Fifth Avenue to First Avenue. What are the view sheds we are trying to preserve? Like the one we just looked at looking down Cedar Street. I mean, the Cedar Street Bridge isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
But I'm hearing pretty clearly, though, that the views should view corridors and protecting views of surroundings isn't the focus. It's rather contextual in the context of the existing built environment that is understood. This, 3 and 4 story thing, up to 45 feet, 3-story type thing, as the driver. That's easy to write. I'll get rid of the purpose statement and just put in some numbers here. That's very easy.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Weber.
I'm going to throw out an idea kind of about the same topic, but a departure from this current discussion a little bit. I've been reading this book called Affordable Cities and how to make housing affordable in our cities. And a big part of that, and we kind of changed this recently in our code, is the supply, of course. But another aspect of that is the ability for cities to regulate lower cost rent. And so I don't know if there's a situation here where we'd incentivize building taller than what we are providing now in the downtown outer core by say, okay, it's right now capped at 45, you can go up additional 10 feet if those units are 30% of the area's median income.
Yeah, that's a tried and true concept called the density bonus. It's just it's a form of subsidy. If the commission's interested in that, that's, ultimately something that you can make a recommendation to council on. That, stepping up a housing program is something you have to, be very mindful of. It's done in a lot of places. The density bonus, here's your base, but if you want to go above, you're allowed to do so if, there's provision for fill in the blank, in this case, deed restricted housing for. So that's a whole program, that's at a cost to somebody to do that. So just keep that in mind. It can be done, is being done all over the place. If that's something that the commission wants us to include as it relates to what we're doing with downtown, say so, and we'll add it to the ordinance.
Yeah, I think it just is like an option. It wouldn't be like a requirement, you don't have to build to 65 feet and it has to be 20%, affordable housing. But as an option for the builder to build more, build more units, with the portion of them being, lower cost rent as a requirement. Just a thought to consider. I know it's a lot of discussion around housing affordability, and I think that could be included in this change potentially. Something to noodle on.
After traveling through town with Google there, and I've felt like restricting building heights feels a little bit, like we're taking away something from potential development. But like we keep saying, what's happened in the last 20 years or 50 years or even more. And I don't know, I mean, like you said, the number is just a number, but if we were at 30 feet, just about every building fits into 30 feet now, or pretty close. So it preserves what we currently have. So the character of downtown, even if there was a new building built, it would be in that same realm. I don't know if we allow it to be 3 stories or say 36 feet just to allow them to have 3 stories when they're going to have to squeeze it in there anyway. And there's only one building down there on First Avenue. I think it's 3 stories right now. So I would be open to 30 feet in that inner core. And then as we step back away from the core, like others have said, the 45 feet makes sense to me, because there's not as much, history in the outer core that's maintained, that's been around for a long time. So I'd be open to that. Instead of going higher to accommodate something, I think maybe, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I mean, the downtown looks really good right now, and if it looked like that in 50 years, I think that would probably be a success. If everything was a little bit taller, I'm not sure it would be any better, really. And I'm not sure development, well, like you said, we haven't seen development. The idea has come up several times, but nothing's ever happened. So, and if it hasn't happened now, I don't know, maybe in 50 years, things change and, building costs are half of what they are now or something like that. But I think there has to be significant changes before, what would be the incentive to build downtown 65 feet or even 45 feet? I don't think it makes sense. So if the downtown inner core shrinks a little bit, then it's like we're not asking a whole lot. We're just saying this small area stays as close to what it is right now for a long period of time. And so what's that,
Mr.
35?
Chair, we did a little AI image generation exercise and creating a scale in AI, we're able to visualize what buildings at different heights look like. So here's a rendering of a 35-foot building at the hole in the ground at First and Bridge. And of course, this isn't scientific. It's very much just AIs. You can call it AI slop if you want, but here's a 45-foot building. So just kind of comparing what two different building heights might create in terms of experience at this intersection, which we're about to spend $4 million to rebuild this year. So you got to imagine this intersection as well after a $4 million renovation effort that's going to take place next winter. So this is very much going to be the core of downtown, the rejuvenated, center of our downtown following this effort that's happening right now. Just a couple, for what it's worth. Don't put too much weight into an AI image ever.
But it gives it.
Pretty cool, though.
It
Yeah.
gives you a sense.
Oh, there's a park next to Cedar Street Bridge.
Yeah.
Which I'd really love to see someday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice. Yeah.
This is looking down First. Canada is about 28 feet tall. There's a 35-foot building on the remainder of First Avenue. Not that any of these buildings, there's 3 or 4 different property owners along here.
Yeah, that gives you a sense of what, 35 feet looks like if you had a complementary building on First.
A couple different concepts there.
Yeah.
There's a 45, 50-foot tall hotel at the old gas station across from.
That's like a 55
Bluebird.
foot tall, I believe.
Yeah, that's a tall one.
Yeah.
I think the scale's really off on this one, though. I'd call this slop.
Yeah. So again, this is an expression of community values. You have a tough job in the end of, making your recommendation as a commission to council. I'm hearing that it's more of a context thing. We enjoy our downtown. We enjoy the area around it. That's probably a better metric for our point of departure on building heights as opposed to, view preservation per se. But 45 feet is kind of the max in the outer core and kind of on the bubble in terms of maybe it's, 30, 35 in the actual core itself.
I really like that we got rid of the steps.
Yeah, that was taken. I think that was a distraction. We currently have that in the code, but I think it was distracting from our conversation.
Agreed.
Yeah. I sent Jason a picture I'd found from an old Sandpoint hotel that's this giant building. And I think you think it might be in that location on the corner of First and Bridge.
Actually, a historic preservation commissioner brought a rendering from like 100 years ago for the gas station location across from Bluebird Bakery at First and Cedar, of a hotel that was proposed. I think it was in the archives at the History Museum. Beautiful hotel that we would welcome today in Sandpoint, I think unanimously. But it's now the office for a contractor company.
Yeah.
Architectural firm.
There you go.
So next time we meet, we're going to go into the building design standards and things like that. I'm going to bring you an ordinance that shows you 45 feet in outer core. I'm going to write it up for 30 feet in the core. And in the end, you can vote on it in the end. We have to move forward at some point with this particular thing. And there'll be a public hearing, of course, to hear all kinds of input when we get there. But Chair, this is your meeting and we have people that have spent hours waiting to possibly weigh in.
So this is a big turnout for us. So if you guys have anything you'd like to add, I'd give you a few minutes each if you'd like.
I just want to know.
Please step up to the dais and let us know who you are. Step up to the mic.
That's just so people on YouTube can hear you.
On the spotlight.
Yeah.
Arnie Raines, I'm in the process of buying the farm and trust now. What the long-term development looks like, I'm not really sure. But, I'm a big fan, and I said it at the last meeting, is let's go up, not out. Urban sprawl, I think, is, you drive Highway 95, Coeur d'Alene, it's all urban sprawl. It's big malls on each side, Highway 95. It looks that way. I'd like downtown Sandpoint to be one of these mountain towns where you have high-density housing and a vibrant downtown. So, thanks.
Okay.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Ned Brandenberger, I really was more curious on how the process worked, and that's why I'm here tonight, just to kind of watch the commissioners. I do think that based on the Sandpoint Center, based on the Church Street apartments, that there needs to be a higher height in that second downtown area. And I do, just based on the cities that I've been in and that we work in Montana, I think that we will see probably in the next 10 years, buildings that approach 35 feet on First Avenue if it's allowed. So in order just to make them work because of the land costs and what you need to do to the return you need to get to build a new building. So that's my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ellie?
I'm Ellie Sussness, and I'm the chair of the Sandpoint Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. And I'm just loving where the conversation is going. 36 feet in the downtown core sounds great to me. If it goes lower, that's fine. The higher 45 in the outer core is wonderful. I just wanted to talk about how that looks. If you've ever been in the hospital annex, gone up the elevator to the 3rd floor, you can see the whole mountains. If there's apartment buildings that go that high in the outer core, that would be amazing. It's a wonderful, if you're talking about view sheds, that's great. And I just think your conversation has been really wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this works out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
There was some discussion about shrinking the downtown core tonight. Is it not a vote, but just kind of a nod of heads. Is there some agreement that maybe we should continue to constrict that core closer to just First Avenue or reduce that periphery along Cedar perhaps?
I think what you did, it shrunk a little bit, didn't it, from last?
Quite a bit.
So,
Well,
I like that.
Yes, it did shrink from the first version back in January, where we had it all the way up to 3rd Avenue, including the Coachella building. I thought there was a great conversation that led to the shrinking of it, but from our first presentation. I'm wondering if there's consensus that we should further shrink it before we bring the next version back to you.
Commissioner Mitchell?
My only thing would be to exclude the hospital. Is that currently the hospital?
I have excluded the hospital since the first version.
I thought it was still on there on the new version.
No, we've moved an entire block to the east from 3rd down to 2nd, from 4th down to 3rd. Apologies. The hospital begins at 3rd.
Can you pull it up real quick?
Yes.
The hospital begins at 2nd.
Oh, the new annex.
That annex that we're referring to.
But doesn't it include the old hospital building or?
Let's take a peek so we're all looking at the same thing.
Yeah, just
It does not. So this is McDuff's and the buildings around McDuff's. The hospital is the next block north. This is the McDuff's beer hall, I should say. This is the McDuff's restaurant. I don't know if you can see my cursor there.
Yeah,
But the hospital's north of that. And then the annex has been removed from the downtown core from the previous version. You can see the whole thing moved a block to the east there.
okay.
We got
Sorry,
rid
I
of
thought.
this. We got rid of this block right here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Simmons.
Was there any, have you received any feedback into extending the downtown outer core that far south to sort of get a little more deliberate around the?
In fact, that came up at council.
Did
So
it?
when Bill presented the first map to council, couple council members said, look, we've got concepts for redevelopment or for infrastructure improvements all around the corner of Superior. There's been conversations. We've extended our parking exempt zone into that Superior area. That the long-term vision for that Superior gateway to Sandpoint is that will become part of our downtown as it gets redeveloped in the future. So excluding that didn't seem appropriate to council from our downtown area. Now, it's not outer core in our latest version. It's just, or sorry, it's not inner core. It's just outer core in the later version. So residential uses would be permitted in that gateway.
Chairman, just
Mr.
to answer
Torpey.
the question, I don't know if you want to take a roll call or just everyone get to say what they think, but I think to answer your question, I am not in favor of shrinking it
Okay.
beyond what it's been shrunk to.
Commissioner Benner, do you have an opinion?
Oh, I think that here again, I think maybe bringing it back down after going up along Main Street there and Cedar a little bit, bring that back down to more maybe in lines with the historic overlay area. And even though McDuff's is part of it in there, I think that actually could be shrunk down in there, some in that area. Going south, I could live with that, but I think even coming back up to Pine Street there would be for the initial set. I just think it's just too big initially to try to service that as a whole core.
Okay. Reed, do you have any thoughts?
Not really strong opinions. I think, as a future idea, what the downtown core could be in 10, 15 years, I think it extending further south from Pine makes sense and into the main and along Main Street as it's shown.
Any other opinions from commissioners?
I would probably include the courthouse and the powerhouse block.
So
And
you're expanding it.
well, I'm just kind of going by old buildings, really. I mean, that's.
I encourage you to think about it as, do you want to allow residential land uses on the ground floor in that outer core area? That's the big difference.
In the outer core.
The outer core, you're allowed to do residential on the ground floor. Again, building customers in around your. It's not, of course, you can do those other things as well, but you're allowing an additional allowance of residential on the ground floor. That's one way to look at the outer core.
And possibly an additional 10 feet of building height if we end up
Right.
staying.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'm okay. I think it's fine.
My point, not extending it, I understand what you're saying because of the courthouse and everything else, but the courthouse property, which will probably remain the courthouse ad infinitum, and the powerhouse and the vacant lots where you come into town, because of their elevation, because they're going down, I mean, they'd be great places for buildings that approach the 65-foot because you're not blocking any true view corridor. You're in the entrance to the town. It's some of the, largest pieces of properties, although there's buildings on them now, but there's that one empty one between the pizza joint and.
So maybe have those retained as commercial A?
Well, no, as long as they're outer core, then they could be 45 foot.
That's true.
Yeah, if we make them inner core, then we're gonna reduce them down to 30 foot. And I think since the elevation change has got to be near 10 feet at least. And I think, because those properties, let's say the McFarland house on the corner, let's say that goes away and the lot next to it, I mean, somebody could put up a decent sized boutique hotel there and have parking to boot. And so I'd like it that it stays in the downtown outer core area. My personal view.
Okay.
Speaking of we.
Get better.
Chair, that concludes, I think this evening, our commentary. Next time we're going to talk about, stuff that'd be a little easier to get through. It has to do with just the building materials, design standards, that kind of stuff.
Wanted to talk about food trucks.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Let's talk about food trucks.
Let's,
You want to meet for a taco and talk about that?
Um,
Food trucks.
As long as the,
okay, so Next on our list, it does say, do commissioners have any questions for staff at this time? And I just had one, just maybe an update on our lot coverage item that went before city council recently.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. It took effect last Wednesday. So it's on the books. It should be the Muni Code publishers will probably have that up this week on the code, and it's in effect. And we've had a flurry of activity at City Hall, people coming in and having meetings with us to understand it. And already 2 or 3 building permits have gone out the door under those new rules.
Chairman, I have
Commissioner Torby.
another question. Did the ADU rules change consistent with the Supreme Court and, all that?
STR.
Excuse me, short-term rental, yes.
So that's still, that actually went to a floor vote today, I think at the legislature.
Oh, but here, did they?
Oh, here.
We have amended our STR ordinance.
We did, in anticipation of that, right. So has there been any rush to the door for more short-term rentals since we changed it? That's my question.
Mandy, what do you think? Randy runs our STR program. She does a great job of it. And Mandy, how would you characterize the change since the ordinance went in place?
We're back to about mid-July numbers of STRs, so maybe 20 a month, and we were slowing down out of the summer season. People weren't applying as much, but no real flurry. I mean, not every member off our wait list even applied for a short-term rental.
Interesting.
So.
Yeah. Keep in mind that the state is up to some serious business with deregulating STRs entirely. So no additional restrictions beyond what would you put on a single family residence. So that's before the legislature right now, and it could have taken a vote today. I don't even know if it.
Just so you're all up to speed, the House Bill 583, I believe, is the bill that was passed through House Committee, went up for a vote on the main floor, passed through the main floor, has now been passed to the Senate. And that will require cities to completely deregulate short-term rentals.
Right.
We will have no more permit or licensing system, no more way to track them other than software that we subscribe to, no application fees because there's nothing to apply for. The only regulations we can have are the requirement of CO2 or CO detectors and fire extinguishers.
That's it. That's before the legislature.
There's some other interesting bills coming to the Senate right now.
4 or 5 that are huge.
So just to point out, highly likely that we'll be coming back with a further amendment to our STR regulations, basically repealing them and replacing them with just what state law allows, which is STR shall equip each room with a fire extinguisher and a CO detector, period. There's some other legislation at the Senate right now that has passed through committee, I believe, that will, or actually, I don't think it's been to a vote at the committee yet, would, if passed, would require us to come back and amend the residential land use code that we just got approved last week. Specifically would require us to apply the minimum lot size of 300 or 3,500 square feet across all of our residential zoning districts. So it's called a state preemption to local zoning ordinances. If that gets through the Senate, it's framed around affordable housing and prohibiting cities from requiring larger lot sizes. So we just did a pretty substantial overhaul to our multifamily zone. The bill before the Senate right now would require no less than 12 dwelling units per lot acre in residential single-family zones, which comes out to around 3,600 square feet per lot. So follow it if you're interested. But when that STR bill gets signed by the governor, which is highly likely to occur, we're going to be repealing our STR ordinance altogether here. And if the Senate bills go through, we may be coming back with amendments to our S zone, reducing minimum lot sizes to the same as we have in our RM zone.
So just for the record, it's H0583 has to do with short-term rentals. S 1222 has to do with, that's domestic wells, that's different. S 1277, accessory dwelling units. S 1279 has to do with starter home subdivisions, which is a new concept being defined under that law. S 1280 has to do with duplexes and twin homes. And S 1263 has to do with the short-term rentals like Jason's been talking about. So I could send an email with just a little, sort of information on these bills or link or whatever, just in case you're interested. But it's significant legislation that's before the legislature right now. Significant. That's all I've got.
As I said earlier, I just spent a week in Boise rubbing elbows with the those people. And everybody's very concerned about how much budget cut is going on right now. And I mean, we're in a state that cuts budgets already, so it was pretty surprising to hear how extensive some things are going to be. And then also there's a big talk of even a tax cut on top of that. So it's a strange time to be in Idaho. And anyway, I guess we could just move on because we've already taken up about 50 minutes longer than what I anticipated. General matters from staff, we can skip that. I think we're good there. Commissioner roundtable, we've kind of done that here. I think we could adjourn unless there's anything else. All right, let's adjourn at 7:21.